Reanimating history. How They Shall Not Grow Old redefines truth-making through CGI animation. In 2018, Peter Jackson released They Shall Not Grow Old, a joint project with the Imperial War Museum and the BBC to commemorate the centennial anniversary of World War I. What is most striking about They Shall Not Grow Old, which subsequently thrusted it into popular favor, was Jackson's restoration and retreatment of the footage into full realistic color, running at 24 frames per second as opposed to its original 10 to 18 frames per second. To a modern audience and a majority of its critics, Jackson created the illusion of a more realistic depiction of World War I than we had ever seen. We now have the ability to redraw pre-recorded footage frame by frame with the help of a computer. And yet, no one seems to be looking at this kind of work for what it literally is: animation. It is through the lens of animation that I'd like to look at this film, particularly the uses of shadow and light, optics and haptics, and movement. Some of the most striking moments are the close-ups of soldiers smiling at a camera, us, with missing and black teeth. Another soldier wearing a Brody helmet tips his head down, casting a shadow over his face. Were this black and white, the face would surely be obstructed, but Jackson has given a broader range of gradients sliding down the soldier's face. Donald Grafton notes a similar quality in animation from the 1930s. He says, "There's no better way to chart how mechanics, form, and content align to reconceptualize performance space in the 1930s than by observing the treatment of shadows. They are essential for creating the illusion of depth. Shadow is instrumental in unifying the foreground and background, but seeing texture within those shadows used to only be the territory of live-action film. Real knowledge of the environment was a dual understanding of these haptics and optics, the seen and the felt." Jackson's reclamation of the IWM's footage is able to provide us a sense that running your hand over uniform's fabric, or the barbed wire of no man's land, the trampled grass of a field, or the bloodied bandage of a field dressing would produce an entirely different tactile sensation. The same cannot be said of the 10 frames per second, starkly contrasted black and white film of the archive. Reinserting the textures took the painstaking concentration of a frame-by-frame animator. The first film cameras relied on an operator to turn a crank, which would determine the rate that each frame was supposed to light. Jackson pointed out that war photographers were particularly inclined to turn the crank faster in moments of excitement and danger, and then return to a steadier rate when stressful moments had passed. The human element would result in footage that could vary in frame rates from 10 to 18 per second. The conversion of 10 frames per second to 24 frames per second would often create strange apparition-like images in Jackson's film. My favorite illustration of this was when a man trips into a ditch as he marches along the road. His body quickly becomes digitized. The bit-formed frame looks alien to the setting only for a second as he struggles to regain his balance. A moment later, he is recomposed and seems at place again in the environment. This moment for me was nothing short of a Brechtian Verfremdungseffect, distancing me from these men. These few seconds become a reminder that I am watching footage Jackson purposely manipulated to make me experience the war from the soldier's perspective. Bertolt Brecht would have called this distancing effect a moment of clarity where the bargain we've made, the exchange of rationality for sympathy, thinking for feeling, is laid bare. To conclude, as I watch this doctored footage, I come back to my question about accepted truth in film. What is our bar for realism, and how do we know we've reached it? I don't have an answer yet. But I do know that though these animations may feel more true, they are not any closer to an objective sense of reality than they were with their original jerky 10 frames per second. It is our relationship to our current technology which dictates an aesthetic sense of optical truth, and not the technology alone. Thank you.